I would like to introduce our guest speaker, Dr. Edward Kennedy, Professor and Head of Mechanical Engineering, KCG College of Technology. He has completed his Bachelor of Engineering in Mechanical Engineering from Bardiyar University in the year 1990, and he done his Masters in Production Engineering from Annamalai University in the year 1993, and he has completed his PhD from NIT Trichy in the year 2009. He served in various capacities in various universities and colleges. He published so many papers in various international journals and conferences. He has completed some funded projects, and some projects are ongoing. Now, I would like to invite our speaker of the session, Dr. Edward Kennedy, Professor and Head of Mechanical Engineering in KCG College of Technology, to deliver his expertise.
Good morning to all. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak with you on this topic, development of composites. Today I will be sharing with you the various ways that composites are being developed at a laboratory level or at a college. Probably we may not have a extraordinary facility to develop composites, but in what are all the possible ways we can sensibly create or develop some of the composites with a moderate facility. We cannot say that with the nil facility, but with a moderate facility we can develop composites in different ways. So I will be talking to you about the various ways, but some of the ways are very popular to you and very common to you. So those ways I will be skipping, and those ways of slightly of interest for all of us, I will be sharing with you those ways. Okay. So when we are talking about the liquid metallurgy route, all of us must be aware that stir and squeeze casting are a very normal way or a very familiar way of creating the metal matrix composites. So stir casting, all of us will be familiar, and squeeze casting is also can be done in more or less in the same setup. And also there are other metal matrix composites that can be developed with the same setups, or compo casting we can develop with the same stir casting facility only by controlling the temperature and on the injection of the reinforcements. Okay, these two parameters, at what temperature we are going to inject the reinforcements or the fillers, accordingly we will be able to control the process by means, we call it as a compo casting. And powder metallurgy, all of us must be aware, is another way wherein we can develop bringing together different elements or metals or even ceramics together. So that is a special advantage. Apart from that, macro composites can be developed through the co-extrusion process. So I will be talking to you, and followed by that I will say something about the polymer matrix composites. Most of us will be aware about hand layup, compression molding, and filament winding. I may not be explaining to you directly these processes, but I will be able to tell you where and all we can apply these processes and what is the purpose of doing certain kind of test in the application side. So this is a very basic facility wherein we know a stir casting setup with the hydraulic unit for squeeze casting. So the main parameters that are controlled here will be always, we are all aware when we are talking about squeeze casting, we can control the squeeze pressure, at what pressure we are able to control. And even the hydraulic power packs may have enough power or tonnage or load to apply the pressure, but we have to take into consideration that kind of dies what we are having. Otherwise the excess pressure may lead to the damage of the die. So that's the one factor we'll be taking. And when we are talking about the stir casting process, as all of us are aware, we always bother about the temperature of the melt or the furnace up to which it can be heated. And also there are some inlet ways. So those temperature also need to be set at a proper temperature, otherwise the flow will be interrupted or it will not free flow into the die. So we have to control the temperature. And when it comes to the stir casting setup, we need to talk about the rotational speed of the stirrer. So that also is another factor, is of importance to us. And when we look into that, these are all the very common factors that influences our process or the quality of the composites that we develop. Sometimes we develop composites with much difficulty, and finally when we take it for a testing, sometimes the composites developed by us will have an inferior quality than that of the base alloy. So that is an alarming thing. Then we have to backtrack where we went wrong. But always our composites that what or the newer materials that we are developed should have a superior property than that of a base alloy. We cannot bring down the property by doing a composite, or we have to exceptionally improve certain properties at least based on the application side. So the temperature is playing a vital role, stirrer speed, stirring time, and the squeeze pressures. So how much the stirrer speed, temperature, and squeeze, I'm not talking much about the squeeze pressure, because only when we want to reduce the porosity, we will be talking about the squeeze pressure. Otherwise, we can talk about this much. And so this is a very conventional way that we develop a composite material. We know that we take the billets, and normally we prefer to take a metal billet and melt it, and we don't prefer to go by the powder. If you are using a powder for melting, then sometimes it will lead to oxidation, and then the powder will never melt. So in the molten metal, the molten melt, you can add powder, otherwise it is always the ingots that are preferred for melting. And also the slag has to be removed, so you have to use the coverall, or you have to use the degasser to eliminate the gases, or if possible, if you have an inert gas environment, it is always welcome that you can go with the inert gas, either argon or any other inert gas that can be completely passed into the melt. And these are the basic setups, and then the die has to be coated before you are pouring the molten metal. This is a split die. What you are seeing is, then once after casting is out, you can do. It is a very, very conventional way that you are doing stir casting process. But today I will be tell you, some of you would have definitely attempted a compo casting. The term is familiar and it is long back used. The speciality with the compo casting is you have to inject the reinforcements in the semi-molten state, because normally when you are taking an aluminum metal matrix composite, you will be injecting somewhere around 700 degrees. Though the melting point of aluminum, we say somewhere 600 to 650 based on the alloying additions, but somewhere 700 degrees is an optimum for you to inject the reinforcements into the melt. But when you are talking about a compo casting, you have to reduce that injection temperature. So you have to reduce it by at least 100 degree, or somewhere around 600 to somewhere around 600 or 650 degree, you can inject the reinforcements. So we have conducted one study here. The study is about how the temperatures are influencing the process. So it is a simple thing. We took aluminum and the very common reinforcements of silicon carbide and studied. We did a normal stir casting process at 700 degrees centigrade, and we always, as you see, that aluminum will have a dendritic, aluminum silicon alloy will have a dendritic structures, and so there was no much special observation. Same way we did it for 800 degree, and also we did it for compo casting, but we didn't do it at exactly 700 degree. There is a pouring temperature, but the injection of the reinforcements was done somewhere between 600 or 620 degrees centigrade. So the melt has to be in the semi-molten state, or almost closely it should be a molten state, but it should not have sufficient fluidity to flow, but it should have. The reason for doing it is, the moment when you are injecting it into it, then you will be able to control it by stirring, so that you will get an uniform distribution. See, most of the time when we develop composites, the problem we face is it is not combo, it is compo casting. So the most of the time, the problem that we are facing with this compo stir casting process is the wettability of the material. For example, if you are using a reinforcement which will have a very less density, for example, if you are facing with you are doing with graphite, then it is very difficult for you to make it wet. It will always float in the molten metal. You have to go either for coating it with some either a nickel coating or some kind of coating you have to give in order to make it immerse or make it wet. So to increase the wettability, you have, it is a problem with the normal stir casting process, as most of us know. Another problem commonly what we face is when we are doing the stir casting process, we are unable to obtain an uniform distribution, because the temperature plays a vital role, the stirring time plays a vital role. So in that case, to eliminate those limitations, we always prefer to go with the compo casting, in which it is a semi-molten state. We inject the reinforcements and then we will be able to stir it even for 10 minutes or 20 minutes or 30 minutes. And then after stirring it at that temperature, it is after injecting it and stirring it, then we will be increasing the temperature, because you will not be able to pour it into the die, because it will not have the fluidity to flow. Sometimes you have to make it flow as a slurry, but it is still very difficult. So then you increase the temperature so that sufficiently it will be able to flow. And it is almost a downpouring machines only, most of the machines. So automatically it will naturally flow into the die. So the advantage is with the compo casting, what we get is we are able to control the process with uniform distribution, and also we will be able to increase the wettability. So there are two categories in this one. We call it a semi-solid to semi-solid, but no, otherwise it is semi-solid to liquid. The injection is done at semi-solid state. Semi-solid means it will not be semi-solid, almost it will be closer to a liquid only at 600 or 650 degree. So you have to control those temperature. We cannot say fixed temperature, because it is based on the alloying additions. It will shift, the temperature will shift this way, that way. So better to sensibly do that with an observation. The major benefits that we got is the stirring time was, or the optimum stirring time was around 30 minutes. Then the stirring speed also mattered a lot. At least when it is between, normally we always use the stirrer stirrer speed varying from 300 to 500. Even you can increase the stirrer speed beyond that, but the optimum stirrer speed is able to get an uniform distribution. The problem normally everybody will be facing is when we are using a stainless steel stirrer or without coating, and then you are using a carbide and then you are stirring it fast. At every melt or at every 3 melt, you will be losing the stirrer. The stirrer itself will cost a reasonable amount, somewhere around 3,500 to 5,000 rupees. And getting another stirrer is a difficult process. So always we have to economically use the stirrer, or we have to get it properly coated so that it will not be eroded in the molten metal by the abrasive actions of the carbides that are present in that. So these are all commonly, most of you would have experienced these things. So the benefit we derived with the compo casting is to improve the wettability. And then whatever the reinforcements, whether you use an alumina particle or you are using silicon carbide or whatever the reinforcement particles, and also the porosity also is we are able to control it. So we are into that process. So we conducted one test by varying the temperatures. For varying temperatures, using an aluminum silicon alloy. Then what we found was there was a compromise. There was the tensile strength is more or less same as the base alloy, though it didn't go down. But other aspects, the hardness we are able to improve because of the uniform distribution of the composite particles or the reinforcements. And also we are able to get a better compression strength. So these two observations we are able to achieve by going for a compo casting So we are able to get these two advantages with this one. But when we are, so this is the diagram, the graph which will be showing us. So the optimum tensile temperature, if you have to go, then that 800 degree was good. But all other aspects, this compo casting helped us a lot to reach. And if you still further control, we think that we will be able to improve the tensile strength also. Otherwise, it didn't go below the base alloy. But if you look into there is a factor which is used to calculate the degree of distribution, or the factor which controls the distribution factor. Okay, so that can be calculated by using this formula. Once you are able to calculate, and then you can compare at what temperature you will be able to, if the stirring speed is 400, then the temperature is this much. The distribution factor should be always low. That means if it is low, then the distribution was maximum, that is uniform, that you can say. So at this particular temperature, because this work was not, actually this calculation was not done by us, so till the previous results we were doing, and we are yet to get into this. But from our observations, what we are able to say is, once we want to get a good distribution, this distribution factor should be kept to minimum. It should be arrived at minimum. So the temperature also plays a role, and the stirring speed also played a good role in this process. If you go from the graph, and also when you see the corresponding microstructures, automatically when that revolution was 200, then the clustering was seen. But when the RPM was 400, there was no clustering. And also this 10 minutes rotation, and as well as 30 minutes rotation, causes some effects on that. So with these things, what we are able to conclude is, if we carefully control the process parameters, the temperature as well as the stirring speed and the duration of the stirring, we will be able to achieve a better properties. Or by, if we go just like that and try to get a casting or develop a composite, sometimes miserably we make a mistake, and thereby we end up the composite having a lesser property than that of the base alloy, which we wanted to improve. Always we develop new materials to improve the properties, but by without controlling these parameters, we are ending up, there is a possibility we will end up with lesser properties of these materials. So this is one of the observations that we did in our lab by using the facility available. So this is one way. The other ways, other two, you will be very well aware that normal stir casting process, and also squeeze casting is nothing but after pouring the molten metal, you can make the ram from the hydraulic press to come and press the molten metal. So by doing so, there should not be sufficient time left, then it will get completely solidified. So the process has to be quickly done, but sometimes people used to say that whatever the squeeze casting that we are doing is not the real squeeze casting. The squeeze casting is the metal has to keep flowing, at the same time you have to press it. But here normally we just pour, at the completion of the pouring, automatically the ram will descend. So but still we will be able to control some of the porosities. We can minimize the porosity, and also we will be able to reduce the gas entrapment and improve the quality of the composite. The quality of the composite is very much essential, because after doing so much of efforts and buying so many reinforcement particles and processing it, and then if you don't arrive at a better results, then automatically the whole effort of attempting will be waste. And also we need to keep trying it for repeated number of experiments to get a very positive conclusions on that. So that is one aspect what we were doing in our laboratory. So the other aspect of developing a composite is like a metallo-ceramic composites. what we did here was we took metal as well as ceramic, and we brought it together by the means of powder metallurgy route. So it is a powder metallurgy process is always a familiar process to all of us. So why we attempted on this is we developed a copper based composite. So we took a majority of a copper material and then along with that ceramic material, and then we attempted to bring it together by ball milling first, and then going for compaction, sintering, and then followed by an extrusion process also we did. But even without extrusion also we have done some experiments on that. So the very speciality with this process is, the way we ventured into this is, we suggested this material as a brake material, braking material, because the normal brake pads that are used will not be sufficient for a high-speed vehicles, especially the high-speed cars or vehicles, automotive vehicles at the F1 competitions or F2 racing, or sometimes even the brake pads that are used in the aircraft. But presently the aircrafts are using with the carbon composites. They are taking carbon fiber and reinforcing with carbon in the rich atmosphere of methane or so. In the hydrocarbon atmosphere, they are injecting carbon into the carbon fibers, and then they develop a carbon composite which will be able to withstand very high temperatures. But before that, what was the stage? Or even now, a smaller aircraft will be having a brake pad with a copper based friction material, because a normal friction material what these automotives are using will not withstand high temperature. So when you want to braking at a short distance, the friction or the heat developed will be more. So sufficient, a suitable material is the need, and already it was used in the aircraft. But for high speed vehicles which requires lesser braking distance, need to choose a right material. So we went for this copper based friction material. So the properties of copper and iron are there. So the ingredients that were selected were copper, iron, barium sulfate and silicon carbide, graphite, tin. So all those things you can choose, and then you can choose a ball milling machine, and then you can choose any type of copper, electrolytic copper, or the other copper also you can choose, and graphite you can choose. So we choose all these materials, and then we ball milled for sufficient number of hours so that we were able to get the required mix and proper blending of these things. And then we went for compacting. It is the usual powder metallurgy route. Sintering was done, then hot extrusion was done, and then the material was prepared and made into the form of a pin. Since our experiment was only concerned with the braking, we restricted much of our discussions with respect to the normal wear testing process, and we didn't, though we tested it for the other mechanical properties, we focused on mainly on the wear behavior at the room temperature as well as the high temperature. So we didn't choose much of the high temperatures. I think only 2 or 3 temperatures, I think 200 degree and some 400 degree. So those are the temperatures at which we tested it. Tested the specimen. We made it like a pin as usual. This is a pin on disc what you are seeing, but here the pin mounted is not that copper based material. So the results showed that at high temperature, it always followed that Archer's wear equations more or less. Whenever there is an increase in the load, what we see, there is a mass loss proportional to the increase in the load, and as the loss more or less like any other material. But when we are seeing the friction coefficients, the observations based on the friction coefficients, what we found here was, when the load was, say for example 0.5 kg and the RPM was also 750, we could see that the friction coefficient was more. So, and also correspondingly the wear rate was also more, up to 1.5, and there was slightly a change in the wear rate of wear when it comes to the 2 kg load. So 4 loads we have chosen, and we did at room temperature and high temperatures. So in both the cases, for the lesser loads, what we saw was increase in the thing. But when the temperature was increased, unusually what we saw was for a temperature of 200 degree and for 0.5 kg load, and there were and for also 1 kg load, we didn't find any of the thing. So repeatedly our experiments also showed us the same kind of results. And when we went for a only when we are able to increase the load, the damage was seen. So only when we go for a higher temperatures as well as a higher load, naturally the material begin to worn out. And so when the speed was higher while testing, the wear testing 1000 RPM and all, naturally when you are increasing the speed, the amount of friction will get reduced. So the damage was not as visible much when compared with 750 RPM. So when 750 RPM and with 1 kg and even for 1.5 kg, we were able to see the dislodging of the material from the surface, though we did proper sintering and compacting and followed by sintering. And also after that, we machined it and we did extrusion also. But still the dislodging was very quite seen at slightly higher temperatures as well as at reasonable loads. So when the temperature was higher and still the load was less, the damage was very minimum only when we did attempted in developing a metallo-ceramic composite. So these kind of composites you can easily develop in laboratory, provided if you have a hydraulic a ball milling unit, and a sintering you can do. If there is a sintering furnace facility, then you can use those furnaces, or you can use even a normal furnace and try to develop these kind of composites. But you need a hydraulic press for compacting purposes, and also a minimum extrusion setup if that facility is available. So this is second of kind of composite materials we worked for some time in our lab. And the another kind of composites, what we call the composites is like macro composites, or the word you can call it as bimetal extruded. In other words, you can call it as a macro composites. So what is this macro composites? In all other cases, the reinforcing particles is at a micro level. We say that this particle was we choose some reinforcements or fillers, and we control the particle size. Sometimes we say we choose a nanoparticle, or sometimes we choose particles of microns in the range of less than 100 microns or 50 microns, or sometimes also we can choose 300 or 400 microns. So, but here in this particular composites, what we call it as a macro composites, that the reinforcement particles is in the form of a rod or in the form of a wire. So what we did was we took normal aluminum 6061 alloy. We drilled holes in that. So there are a number of holes drilled. It should not be a through hole. It should be a blind hole. So 2 mm before, we choose a specimen of a size of 30 mm diameter. So the aspect ratio was also 1:1. So somewhere we made a hole drilled up to 28 mm. So boring, leaving the bottom 2 mm. And then we inserted copper wires, that what we call electrolytic copper wire. We inserted in all these holes. And afterwards, we took it to the extrusion setup, where the extrusion setup itself has a furnace to heat this one. But in order to save the number of pieces that we want to extrude, what we did best was we just kept it in a normal muffle furnace at a temperature of around 450 degree. And then just hours before the extrusion, we transfer it to the extrusion furnace available with the integral with the extrusion setup. So automatically it is a hot extrusion setup. So once it was transferred, then with the copper wire inserted, completely filled, I think I should have shown another diagram. Then we did the extrusion process. So after extrusion, the same piece, what you are seeing here, after extrusion, we are able to obtain up to this level. But though it looks like an aluminum at the outer case, all the inner side will be having the copper rods or copper wires running from one end to the other. So that you have to ascertain. When you are extruding copper and aluminum together, whether the flow is uniform till the end, so whether the copper wire is able to flow or get extruded till the end, or sometimes it may stop in the middle also. But here we checked whether it was able to, because copper has a good ductility, so it has flown. But another thing we can say is, if you want to go for a weight reduction is only your objective, then after drilling it, you choose any element or material which is having a lesser density than your base alloy. Because when you are adding copper, we were aiming it as a structural material to have a strong structure to withstand an impact load or shock loads. But when you are looking only for a weight reduction, you always choose, you can choose any matrix material and also any reinforcements. So that reinforcements also can be, you have to decide the density. For example, I want a lightweight material, composites with two, then I can choose aluminum, or even I can choose aluminum with some other alloy like magnesium, or I can choose magnesium and lithium. Magnesium and lithium will always, magnesium already has a lesser weight, and also if you add lithium to it, it is still reduces the weight of magnesium and provides a better strength. So like that you can choose, but here we have our purpose was different, so we choose copper. So density wise, the copper will have more density than that of aluminum. So after extrusion, what we did was we just see, so this is the see, before extrusion, the surface of aluminum alloy, and this is the copper alloy. And after extrusion, we saw what has taken place at the point of the interaction, or at the interface between this copper and aluminum. So we want to check whether it was throughout from, so we made some 3 cross sections and just found out whether it was throughout, and also what kind of a bonding is going to take place when we are extruding it. It is just going to remain as 2 separate things, or this copper is able to dent into the aluminum matrix or diffuse into the aluminum matrix, or whether this copper is available in the aluminum matrix as a separate copper, or is there any bonding, that is metallurgical bonding, that is going to take place between by bringing these together. So this was our observations. So when we did it with aluminum and copper, we were able to see that the formation after some time, after you are heating it and doing extrusion, and after a few days or after some time, when you take an XRD and see whether any intermetallic is formed, whether the real metallurgical bonding is taking place, or if these 2 metals are existing as a complete standalone thing. So if it exists as a complete standalone, then automatically our purpose will not be solved, because we are aiming for a better strength. So any intermolecule, any intermetallic is developed, like AuCl2, AlCl2, AlCu2, like that some intermetallic material is developed or not. So that was our observations, but with this we are able to get a reasonable strength. But only area we struggled was the tensile strength, as we expected, didn't come, and even sometimes it went below the base alloy, because there was a sufficient increase in the hardness. So here you can see, when you magnify and see, you can see the grains were getting elongated in the extrusion process, which normally takes place, and then always there will be some diffusion of this matrix into the other one. And yeah, sometimes the copper is present in the form of the dark spaces. Those things, the copper will be existing as some standalone copper. So there was some diffusions, and there was one intermetallic formation that we could see. So when we check for the hardness in different places, so hardness at the near interface of aluminum, it was there. Hardness at the interface zone where copper and aluminum came together, and the hardness at the copper side was high. So there was an improvement in the interface at the hardness, and also it shows a very better strength for impact strength. So there was a sufficient impact strength. It is natural you are taking an aluminum and inside copper rods are running, copper wires are running. So automatically it will be able to provide sufficient impact strength. Though it looks like externally it's an aluminum, but it wherever shock loads or shock resistance are required, naturally you can choose these materials for a thing. But when we are talking about the yield strength, there was a drop. And when we repeatedly go, even on the repeated thing also, we were able to find out there was a reduction. There was a reasonable reduction in the tensile load, that what we were able to see this. So other than that, in all other aspects, we were able to improve. But when we want to improve this tensile strength, we have to go for a subsequent reduction. Actually, we went for a 2:1 reduction. So the 30 mm rod was brought in, and then it was elongated. So the length was almost 90 mm. The diameter was around 15. So it is a reduction for 2:1. If you go further reduction onto it, further reduce it, in such cases, we were able to find out there was a reasonable increase in the tensile strength. So further reduction has improved that one. So that we observed it so this is the fractured portion. So the fractured portion, the SEM image will show very clearly that it is a very ductile fracture. You can find out some of the dimples in the fractured surface. In the other portions had an extruded copper wire, which can be seen. So the phenomenon very clearly explained to us, it is a ductile fracture. And so the same way we attempted with the titanium also. Instead of introducing a copper wire, we want to develop a macro composite by the co-extrusion process. Whatever this process is called is a co-extrusion, because jointly we are extruding two metals together. So here instead of copper wire, we took the same thing, introduced the titanium wires, and then the extruded specimen, the length of the rod was 102, and here it was 104, because we vary the percentage of titanium addition. So you have to reduce the number of holes, or you have to increase the number of holes, and then decide what percent of addition you are making it. So thereby controlling the number of holes, and even you can control the diameter of the holes. The reason why we went for a 2 mm hole also is otherwise we have to put some higher extrusion pressure, and to avoid that, then we went for a 2 mm hole. You can even put a bigger one and then try to extrude it, but it all depends upon the power of your hydraulic press. So when we are extruding it with aluminum, the titanium alloys, it shows the effect of grain orientation. It is very common when you are extruding it. On the direction of extrusion, you can see the grain movements. And apart from that, we made one study, but I didn't include. EBSD studies were also done to determine the direction of the grains, and accordingly to find out in which direction it provides the maximum strength. So that studies also we did. So here again, you can see the interface between the aluminum matrix and the titanium. It is because of the etchant color, I think these graphs are shown in this color. So in some places you can see that the flow of the material into the aluminum matrix. In other places you can see it stands as a separate thing. But this titanium and aluminum did not go much well. Though strength-wise and property-wise, it showed a better results. But when it comes to the intermetallic formations, or when it comes to the bonding levels, the aluminum copper was somewhere superior in terms of bondings compared to the aluminum titanium. But the mechanical properties and the other results showed that aluminum titanium. But we went for two reductions here. We went for the first reduction 2:1 ratio, and then with the 2:0.5 ratio also. So these two ratios, there you can see improved changes in the tensile strength. So when you go for this kind of process, when you go for a subsequent reductions, you will be able to get better results. And also we conducted a corrosion test on that. but especially this aluminum and titanium are already a very good corrosion resistant. This we done with the help of an electrochemical corrosions by using the unit supplied by the Biologic. It is a computer controlled corrosion testing machine. So the corrosion rate also was found to be less for the one sample which was have a further reductions onto it. So this is with respect to the development of macro composites, what we call. The earlier first one, what we saw was a compo casting. The second one was the metalloceramic composites that we developed using a powder metallurgy process. And that process was still a tough one for us in the laboratory level to control certain parameters. But the third one was slightly interesting to us when we did it in the lab. But the results, but still we keep doing these experiments and trying whether any other better results are coming or not. But that is going on. And with respect to polymer composites, most of us know a very basic technique wherein a polymer composites can be developed. The idea of going for this polymer composite is we did one. Okay, it is a very normal thing. We took polyester resins and epoxy resins, and then as we all know that we know glass fiber, the synthetic fibers will always have a better property. The speciality with the fibers also, we know that rather than the bulk strength of a material, the fibers will have a much superior characteristics and property, rather than when you take a bulk material and check for it, that the fibers will always give a superior properties and for its superior strength. So these fibers are normally we prefer. So just like everyone, we use a hardener and also we use a catalyst. And that regular process, what we did was we produced a thing 12-inch by 10-inch thick flat thing. So the idea what we had was we want to check it for erosion actually. The reason for checking it for erosion is we were trying to find out whether these materials can be very well used as a pipeline materials for pumping slurry. So that was in our mind, especially in the mines, people were using some pipes. So you cannot use a normal PVC pipes to pump out because of the erodent. And also you cannot use the GI pipes also. Of course, you can use the cement pipes, the durability will be naturally less. So in that case, whether we can substitute a pipe that was made by a polymeric material, especially GFRP pipes, as a replacement for carrying the slurry that is pumped out of the mines. So that was our idea. And for that, what best we can do, develop a composite and check. So we developed even the natural fiber composites and other things, but those composites compared to that always the synthetic fiber showed a better results. So with that in idea, we developed a composite with the help of a hand layup technique. The techniques are normal. This one is again natural fiber. What we used is jute fiber. Apart from that, we used alternative layers also. I think someone in our in our list is talking about a few days later about the stacking sequences. In what sequences a better strength can be arrived. So like that, so there are some topics available. So I don't want to go deep into the stacking sequences and the influence of it. So just a way you can think, though you can stack it in any order to find a better one by testing various testing, you can always come out which one order is better, or whether you want to sandwich type or you want to have continuously 3 layers of one material and another 3 layers of another material. So like that, or you can want to go only with glass fiber or carbon fiber or Kevlar. So accordingly you can choose. But what we choose was like we choose a normal glass fiber composites based on epoxy as well as on polymer. So the process of hand layup is all known to you. So I don't want to go deep. It will be very basic if I go into it. So we know the formula for calculating the fiber volume. So this is always an important for you to work out what is the fiber volume. Using this formula, you can always find out what is the volume of fiber that have used, which will tell you whether what the panel you are using is a thick or thin laminate. And a normal testing we did. So normal testing, what I mean is we did radiographic testing. Just you can take an X-ray and see whether dark spots are there anywhere. So the dark spots will always tell you ununiform distribution of resins. And also you can check the hardness by using of a Barkol indenter unit. Mostly it will tell you about the resin hardness. And like any mechanical testing like tensile, flexural and hardness. So all those testing, we also did it for this one. And finally, we came to the conclusion, we came to the process that we want to test it for erosion. Yesterday, our professor was talking about erosion testing by using of jet impingement tester. You might have seen in many places. So wherein the erodent, the particle is important factor, then the impingement velocity, there will be an impingement factor. And also the angle impingement, the angle of inclination at which the jet or the nozzle is going to erode the surface. So that angle is important. Then velocity of the erodent coming out or the erodent of the slurry, or you can choose thing. But what here we are having is a pot erosion tester. The speciality with this tester is the simulation will be more closer to the erosion that are taking place in the pipelines. Actually, it is not a ASTM testing standard, but whenever we want to check something, what happens, what kind of an erosion will take place in a pipeline when the flow of water is there. So it will be a closer approximation when compared with the jet impingement. So we choose this particular method. So the plate that was made was cut into pieces. The specimens were mounted here like that. You can say it was 3 inch in length, 1 inch in width, ½ inch in thickness. As usual, like any other wear testing, what you do is you will take an initial weight and then final weight, and then you have to mix the tank with the slurry. The slurry concentration is a factor. What kind of a concentration you are using? Whether you are using water, what ratio the slurry and this erodent. Erodent can be normal silica, or you can use even alumina as an erodent. So the ratio between the water and the erodent is important. So you can choose 3 or 4 ratios. The more the water and the more the erodent you are choosing, there will not be any possibility for the free flow of the erodent. So naturally you will lose the velocity. So in that case, what we observed was only when the ratio was 8:2 or 7:3, then we were able to succeed. When it went to 6:4, there were no erosion took place because there was no velocity in the impingement. So that was one of our observation. And when again, the particle size also played a vital role. When we had a coarse particle size of 1630 and particle size of 5070 and 3080, 3 different particle sizes we were attempted. The particle with the coarse particles were able to make or dent a better erosion compared to the finer particles. And also the velocity with which we rotate. When we increase the velocity of this hub from the motor, the contact between the erodent and the material was missing. So you have to optimize the speed. At what speed and what concentration you will get the required erosion. So that was one of the study. So the purpose of that study is to find out whether which of these materials can be rightly used for a pipe which can be made by means of filament winding to transport the slurry mixture. Or even you can not even say that only it can be used for mining. Even for our drain pipes, that what people are laying on the ground and carrying the drain water, these GFRP pipes can be very well used. But in some applications, we saw that these pipes are widely used for carrying compressed air also. So the other day we saw, I don't know whether. So the test conducted for us showed what kind of a testing is polyester with glass fiber, epoxy and other things. We calculated the Mohs loss and then we calculated the erosion wear rate. How to calculate the erosion wear rate? The formula is available. So based on that, you can calculate the erosion wear rate and then find out which of these composites that are developed, even whether with a hand layup, or you can choose even compression molding process, and then which of these composites were used, it can be chosen for the particular application. So it gave us a view that this particular composites can be preferred, but all the natural fiber composites that we developed for these applications didn't do well. So I didn't include in our discussions here because the moisture content present in that is playing, and even we are not able to properly get the results because even after drying also the results didn't show an improvement. So synthetic fibers were doing good. So the test conditions showed this one. Finally, we find out that GFRP with epoxy, naturally epoxy will show you a better hardness, can be used, and polyester, the flowability of the polyester was very fine, and it went very well with the glass fibers. So I have seen bigger pipes that are used for carrying compressed airs, bigger GFRP pipes, like 2 feet in diameter size, that are developed by filament winding, that are used for a long stretch, even for a stretch of 1 kilometer in some industries that are used to carry the compressed air. But when you want to go for that kind of a testing to carry the compressed air or some other thing, there is another testing that is called air jet erosion. So those that can be always used for testing rather than going for testing with the help of a pot erosion. Air jet erosion is again a compressed air will be coming along with the particles. You can check the erosion rate by the particles. So that is another way you can do or check for, develop a composite and go to check for this one. So the SEM examination showed after a continuous rotation, okay, especially I think this is with the 500 RPM, the fibers were seen broken and the matrix were got depleted. So this number of the duration of this rotation, you can always keep it increasing. Say for example, 4 hours, what happens? 7 hours, 12 hours, then 24 hours, 48 hours, like that you can increase. You can run this up to 100 hours actually. But intermediately you have to choose the, remove the specimen and take the readings. So at how many hours of applications these materials are getting failed. So for us, somewhere the failure we could see that somewhere around 48 to 50 hours. But because in the stringent atmosphere we are testing it, it won't happen in the real life because that much abrasive action or erosive action you will not be able to see on a pipe that is fitted for carrying anything. But we were seeing because the testing atmosphere, sometimes we were able to see only the damage took place only on the matrix material, but not it didn't reach the fiber also. So we put 12 layers of the fiber in order to get better results. So you can increase the thickness also, then you can naturally you'll be able to show a better strength. So this is what we saw, I think. One with the epoxy and another with the polyester. Polyester showed damage to the matrix as well as to the fiber. And so we, as I told you, we also just checked the stacking sequence, which of these one stacking sequence were doing well. The combination for us was doing well compared with the thing, though yes, the hybrid combinations were doing well with respect to the flexural as well as thing. The order in which it was sequenced is given separately. So whether it was a sandwich or it was a thing, I think earlier whether I have shown you or not. Okay, so that is with respect to this is okay. This is I just tell you that applications of the filament windings and other things. This is a very common thing everywhere you can get, but whatever the application I suggested is suitable for making pipes to carry gases, compressed gas, or the drain pipes, or pipes that are required for the mines, especially in pumping the slurry or the minerals. So then comes the last method to tell you about is the development of nano composites. How these nano composites can be, the very advantage with the nano composites is its ability to go and fill and occupy those places. And also it is not going to occupy a large volume, because only infusion is possible from 0.5 to 5% only. It is not going to take more than that. So that is a specialty. So you can develop any nano composite in any way also, even by means of metal matrix composites you can develop by adding the reinforcements. The reinforcements can be, the nano particles can be developed by so many methods, as most of you must be knowing. But even by ball milling you can do, but you need to have preferably to have a ceramic ball mill. Because with steel ball millings it is not possible, and also ball milling sometimes will take a high time, because when you crush the metal powder there is a possibility of fire taking place when you are reducing it in the sizes. So you have to keep careful, and you have to lubricate it properly so that the friction is reduced and then you are able to arrive. But a continuous non-stop ball milling is required. But there are other methods by which you can develop the powders, the nanoparticles. And so we have different applications, but only one method we were ventured into it. I will just tell that particular method also. As I said, your percentage of weight of the nanofillers can remain very low, only between 0.5 to 5% due to low filler percolation threshold. And it always improve it always gives you a better results. But provided if you buy the nano powder, if you produce the nano powder, it will be economical. Otherwise, if you want to buy it, it will be very costly. Even if you buy 100 grams of boron carbide powder, nano powder particles, then it will cost you more than sometimes 50,000 rupees. So the particle size plays a vital role. And the very purpose, what is the size of the particle should be when you want to achieve a particular activity. So for each activity there is a limitations and a preference that is being shown. So that these data will be available to you everywhere. So I don't want to tell on that. And for ceramic metal matrix nano composites, you can choose the powder like alumina, silica, or silicon nitride. Silicon nitride you can always try if you are not already have used Si3N. The reason is whenever you want to use or suggest any material for a bearing applications, this will reduce noise, so you can choose preferably that one. And also the other processing methods is you can use a sol gel process also for getting the nano powders like that. But the properties, which kind of properties you want to improve, accordingly you choose the correct powder and then use it in that applications. So these are some of the applications that for each powders are commonly or normally used. You need not again go and do the literature review to do this process. And spray pyrolysis. Okay. So what method we adopted, I will just give a clue. Okay, there are 4 or 5 methods. You can also try at a laboratory level in your offices. So one is by intercalation of the polymer or a pre-polymer from solution. So this process are very simple. You will take an organic clay and a thermoplastic polymer, and then blending and annealing. Then automatically you pour it in the mold. So the examples you can see it here. So you take a nanoparticle. This is an in situ process. So by some reactions, by passing the radiation or heat, this monomer will get converted into polymer, as you know, that nanoparticles can be dispersed and then put into a nanocomposites. So the dispersion here also matters. You have to do correct characterization for that. And also for a solution processing, you can choose any of these polymer solvent and then use the nanoparticles, then mix and disperse, and then evaporate the solvent. Automatically you will be end up with a nanocomposites. And also the another thing is for the, especially with the thermoplastic materials, take the polymers, heat it, okay, and then mix it with the nanoparticles. Automatically you will be ending up. So in a similar way, what we did was, okay, you can choose any of the ways and you can choose any type of polymer, but normally what we did was something we did with the polyvinyl alcohol. Polyvinyl alcohol was we have chosen, and then polyethylene glycol also you can choose. Then you can choose a modifier. So the purpose of okay, so you can choose any modifier or metal oxide for a nanoparticle. You can go for a sonications. You can either use an ultrasonic vibrations to mix it, or you can go for a mechanical vibrations. So we choose this one, and then instead of a modifier, for the sake of modifier, what we did was we choose a green extract. That green extract, what we used was aloe vera extract, and then the modifier we choose was Cu2SO4, copper 2 sulfate. So by doing that, we are able to reduce this Cu2SO4 to CuO nanoparticles. Okay, so instead of aloe vera, you can use calotropis also. You have to take the extract, heat it or boil it some maximum up to some 80 degrees centigrade, and you have to take the extract and use it with the polymer that have chosen. So you have to take that extract and then use it with this particular thing to get reduced to the nanoparticles. Then you can use, because when we are using an extract, we don't require a modifier, so this itself will act as a modifier. Otherwise, you choose any of the modifiers. The reason is, always being a nanoparticle, too much of agglomerations may be taking place, or it will be like an aggregate here and there. So to avoid that, you always use. So only one attempt we made with the green extract with Ce2SO4. And we reduced these nanoparticles and then used that nanoparticles along with this one, PVA. We used polyvinyl alcohol, and then we did, but we didn't go for an ultrasonic, but we did it with the mechanical stirring process, and then we proceeded with the development of nanocomposites. So the characterization process I didn't deal because it was done by one of my faculty. So she was able to do this characterization to ensure that the particle that we mixed is a nano, and also the other properties she was able to find out. So again, it is a laboratory one. It is not a very cost consuming one. So whatever the process I discussed is not a very costly process, and you can develop in a laboratory level, and you can ask your students also do and get benefited. I think I have finished well ahead, I think. Can I open it for discussion, sir?
Participants, do you have any queries?
Okay, the question is whether the properties will change, but it is based on what kind, the quality that you are maintaining. And there will be a slight improvement. It is not like a complete change will be there, but there will be always an improvement when you go from one process to the other, because the process itself will be supporting it. No, even in hand layup, when you are doing with the two different persons, there is a thing, quality wise, there will be a difference, because the reinforcements and the matrix should go well. Otherwise, if there is any air entrapment when they didn't roll it properly, or even in the compression molding, when you are doing it, a perfect finish will be coming, like a glass finish and all. So those properties are slightly superior when you compare with other things. But it is not it will not be very high, but a slight change, a small level of incremental will be there in the properties.
Sir, I am Ram Gopal Reddy from RVR and JS College of Engineering.
Yes, sir.
Sir, in compo casting, you are saying that so that in at semi-melting state, the reinforcement will be added. So in that case, what happens means so viscosity reduces, and how you will get the uniform dispersion. So this reinforcement.
No, actually, whenever we say it is semi-molten, it is not completely semi-molten also. Slightly it has come to the liquid level. Okay. It will not have a flow. It will not have a flow. You will not be able to cast it. But you have to increase the duration, sir. That's why I said in the graph, if you are doing it within 10 minutes of rotation of stirring speed, you will not achieve it. So it has to be fairly high. There is a difficulty and challenge because your stirrer will not rotate that much freely. But after heat, okay, and also the stirrer sometimes will get damaged also when you apply increased pressure on that. But another aspect is after it is possible that you can make the stirrer to rotate for more duration, and then naturally you will be increasing the heat, till the pouring temperature. Otherwise it will not flow. That's why there are two categories: to pour it as a slurry, and another one is to allowing it to the material to flow. So it is possible, but you cannot arrive it in one stretch. Actually, today I want to do compo casting and I want to do means at least 3-4 trials. If you go, you yourself will know at what time and what amount of speed will help you to achieve. But the temperature is a criteria, sir. You should not allow excess temperature. Then it will automatically become a stir casting process.
Okay. Sir, one more question. So here, in case of ceramic matrix composites, so most generally used process is powder metallurgy. But
Yes.
so is there any other process so is available for manufacturing these ceramic matrix composites, sir, other than powder metallurgy?
But I also attempted only with the powder metallurgy only. But other method I also didn't try. Or must be available, but I'm not very successful in that.
And so when you are making nano composites, sir, so actually, so when you add this nanoparticles, so what happens means floating will be there. So in that case, so your what is the general method used to uniformly distribute these nanoparticles, sir?
Actually, whatever that nano composites that we developed is by again going for some additives or modifiers or some coatings. Okay. I did it with nano composites by going for a nickel coating onto it. When I took a silicon carbide powder, a graphite, it started floating with the metal matrix. Okay, so then I went for a nickel coating to make increase the wettability, but it is but the quantity will be less now, so you will be able to control it. But we are not going to add 50 grams or something, so the quantity will be less because the infiltration will be more. So that way we are able to achieve it.
Okay, sir. Thank
you. Sir, 2 more questions in the chat box, sir.
How much percentage of magnesium with aluminum to get a good corrosion resistant? Actually, magnesium is more corrosive when compared with aluminum. So when you want to go with aluminum magnesium, but I don't know what is the exact percentage that we need to add, but preferably you can reduce the quantum of magnesium when you want to go for I think you are asking question relating to the co-extrusion. Or what you can do is you can slightly oxidize the magnesium wires by some PUO coating or some oxidation coatings on magnesium, and then you can try to use it so that it will be corrosion resistant. But another thing is, as such, whatever when we are doing co-extrusion, the inner material is not going directly exposed to the atmosphere, so it will not pose a problem in that case. But weight reduction, it will provide a better support compared to using copper or titanium. But I have seen people working with magnesium and lithium, so that was really yielding a better results, and many papers are also available in the same lab where I work. People were working with magnesium lithium alloys, and it yielded it showed a better results.
Sir, one more question. The previous Kiran Kumar Banga. See the chat box.
What about fatigue and fracture properties of composites? What process to be followed to identify that? About the dissimilar polymer composites. Fatigue and fracture properties of a composites, and but as he was asking, I have tested only a normal metal matrix composite for a fatigue property. But just like the way bulk material was there, it went to the same number of cycles before failure. So it was not, it didn't have a easy, quick failure, but reasonably it went more or less. When we loaded it nearly for 24 hours, we run the bulk material, means more or less we are able to run it for that stress that we have given. And the second part of the question, dissimilar polymer composites. I don't have much exposure on that, sir, so I should not answer you wrongly.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. It was an excellent session on development of composites, and we are very much thankful to you, sir, and thankful to the participants also. The feedback link for the session is posted in the chat box. Please fill it. Please, participants, can you fill it? Yes, sir. Edward, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you all the participants.